Yes, however, it is important to note that resistance of this form, led by the governor, aka our commander in chief, is what? Execution of state rights, which is what? A constitutional capability. Us without a leader that is elected, so our state commander in chief leading, so Newsom not being in the picture of our lawful resistance to this end can be categorized as a rebellion, not just for the federal but for the state, right? So Newsom can be like, I don't sanction this, so I'm gonna use local and state enforcement to attack my own citizens, right? So this is why it's critical for Governor Gavin Newsom to be forced and pressured to actually decide, are you going to protect the private police force badge or are you going to protect the citizens? Because it's going to be bloody and chaotic if we don't have our commander in chief to lead us to this end. And that's why I keep annoying everyone about this, because unless we recognize that we have a solution, then we will not demand it, right? Because people are like, it's impossible for Governor Gavin Newsom to do it because of the consequences, martial law. But if we have to do it, it's the same consequences, right? But more bloodier, and they can say it's a rebellion versus state rights. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, the Hot Wheels dude, he knows how to maximize on his state rights, right? But the blue governors are scared. What we have to do is act first, litigate later. What has to be done is Governor Gavin Newsom calling up on Californians who are armed to join a militia contrary to that of the Guard, right? Give an ultimatum to the Guards, California or the federal, right? In this reality, we have to acknowledge that the state governor, no matter how you feel about him, needs to be the commander-in-chief who leads us, so that there can be some legitimacy to the 2A, which I'm gonna attach the video of the American theory that positions that we are allowed to use this when we have exhausted the courts. But I would say that that is preferred to come from the state. And I know it seems impossible, but even more impossible is the fact that we're in this place to begin with, right? And that's the reality. We have to start thinking of non-traditional actual realities in which we can respond, right? But litigation isn't going to do anything. That's what Gavin Newsom said he was going to do with the decision. We're going to continue suing. But suing doesn't end the fucking harm that's being done, right? In this reality, it's up to us as Californians to pressure the state to create that. And obviously it's going to be difficult, because it's like when I positioned the constitutional crises campaign after the certification, Democrats were basically like, we didn't want to trigger, any sort of pushback or backlash from the Republicans if we questioned the legitimacy of an insurrectionist, right? So the fact that the courts didn't actually give any sort of expulsion of an insurrectionist from even being capable of running, it means that Congress didn't have the power to overstep that, right? So they didn't eventually go on that route. So when people question why they didn't do it, they say, well, we couldn't, right? And technically, under tradition, I mean, I guess so, but their maximum capacity is that they should have, challenged the election of an insurrectionist, because ultimately, above democracy is the constitutional supremacy, right? And above the courts is what? Constitutional supremacy. So ultimately, we need to pressure the state governor to that end, right? If you're in a red state, I touched upon this in the American theory that I'm going to attach, but ultimately, even this in itself, while I agree that no one will save us, we need that filter to be capable of saying this isn't a rebellion. This is a restoration of the Constitution. The Supreme Court literally said that the majority of Californians do not hold citizen privileges, right? We can be deemed as non-citizens just for our ethnicities, just for our behaviors, just for our characteristics that are contrary to that of the default of whiteness, right? In this reality, our state governor should maximize, because the majority of the state is being affected. It is a threat to the state, right? Will he? That's the question.